Paso a Paso podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Paso a Paso podcast. My name is Miles and glad to be with you here on another episode. In today's show, we have another guest who we have yet to hear from, and we're so happy she's with us today to share some additional perspective on the landscape of early childhood and children and parents and families in Taos, New Mexico, as we like to provide. Thanks for being here, and would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Thank you, Miles. My name's Michele Hunt. I am the director and school leader at the Anansi Charter School. I'm a member of Paso, but I don't always get too many opportunities to interact with that group due to the responsibilities of running a kindergarten through 8th grade public school in the community of Taos, and particularly this year in this challenging time of our pandemic. So I'm pleased to be here today and happy to share some ideas and some methodologies and thoughts that I've used to support the families that are part of the Anansi community, and perhaps they get to trickle out a little bit to other families.
Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your perspective on these topics. Yes, and as you mentioned, for those unfamiliar, Paso is a network of providers and people that help support families of young children. But we also want to shed some light on additional perspectives from the community, and you happen to help us with both, so we appreciate that. We spoke a little bit before we began recording this episode, and we thought that's something that might be nice to touch on and helpful to touch on, and not something we've spoken about earlier on this podcast and series, is the change of pace, the change from day to day that all of us are having to experience and adjust to, and that can kind of throw people off a bit, can it, Michele?
It certainly can. It's challenging to function and completely operate from your home for all aspects of child rearing, educating, employment, establishing boundaries for that and figuring out what your routine's going to be like is really quite difficult. And for kids to know how to get excited and how to engage through a screen as a learner, particularly a young child in that experience, is really quite challenging for everyone. So, I try to start with encouraging parents to take a step back and take it easy and take some deep breaths and sort of assess what's essential and what's needed. And of course, attending school for our children is really critical, and finding ways to connect socially is essential in their daily life, as well as spending time outdoors, having opportunities to play, figuring out how to have opportunities to play with others. And I'm looking more from that school age population, as opposed to the birth to 4-year-old years is the group that I support and assist. And we've had some very exciting things happen at Anansi with our younger children. So I'd be happy to share a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, if now's an okay time, I'd love to hear more about that.
Okay. Well, some things that right from the beginning of school, and it's never too late to get these things set up, and we're still helping families get these things accomplished in their homes, is to create a space that's known as their learning space for school time. Not that their whole life and their whole experiences in their day are learning times for young children. And if we're paying attention for all of us, but for kids, defining the space that's school, and whatever your school has given you as the learning tools for your child to have a kit or a tote or a shelf that you've dedicated to keep those school things in the same place so they're there for your child every day. And making that space free of distractions. If there's a place in their bedroom that works well, then terrific. If it needs to be, in the living room or at the kitchen table, those things are all fine. But you just want to have at least, even if it's a milk crate or a cardboard box, that there's a place that those are my school things. And when it's my school time, I have a way to get those things out and set myself up and have the help of my parent to get myself set up for my school day. And then some other routines really help with that. The school gives everybody a structure as far as times that the child needs to complete specific tasks every day. But just that routine that we're going to keep up what we've always done. We have a time that we eat breakfast together. We have a bedtime, a wake up time. We eat our meals, we take breaks, and using the cues from a school setting of making sure you take times to consider recess or play times in between the learning times is really helpful to the kids to have that structure and know what's expected. I think when kids know what's expected in situations, it helps them to relax and to feel comfortable with the tasks they need to attend to. And so those are some real simple basics that we go with in our setting to get kids started on knowing how to be a learner each day and how to interact and be part of their group. Keeping those tools at the ready for school really helps them be successful in the school environment. And then making sure that everything doesn't happen on a screen is also really important for the children, especially our younger kids. But actually, we found our kids the whole way up through 8th grade really appreciate opportunities to do things in an interactive way through having, the real deal of paper, books, pencils, science kits they can interact with, and then opportunities to chat with peers about what they're doing. And that brings me back to the parent again of making sure we're taking that time to have conversations still about what happened in the classroom or the books that we're reading together, or having time for curiosity every day with our kids. And I know that that's tough with everything that's going on in trying to hold a job and complete our own tasks while our kids are also learning. And as a parent, knowing that now I'm my child's teacher, I'm their parent, I'm their disciplinarian, I'm their organizer, I'm their caregiver, to have all those roles on your lap at once and figuring out how to say, okay, we need a mental health break here, and knowing that it's okay to take one is really, really important. And so I think about some basic mindful practices that I would also suggest getting into a routine. And there's just some simple questions that you as the adult can ask yourself each day. And that is, what do I need to focus on today? And then asking your child, what do you need for school today? Or what do you need? What's important in your day today? What am I grateful for? And having that practice of appreciation, of noticing things that matter to us every day, gives us that hope and that optimism to keep moving forward. And then what do we need to let go of? What are the things that cause us to feel a bit anxious? I'm sorry, I have my phone's ringing in the background. And how can we work through those things if we have them? And as we do that on a daily practice of, taking the time to chat, we can find that anxiety drops away a little bit just by having that space to breathe and to interact with each other about what's on our mind.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Was there more?
No, that's kind of a good segue to just move into whatever, you have on your mind today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, I had to start taking notes because what you shared with us brought to mind a lot of different things. Certainly, I guess, kind of doubling back to the beginning and leading through what you just shared. I really appreciate that you mentioned the adjustment to a new routine, because routine, as you said, does create a sense of safety for children and for adults as well. And that's really the hardest part, I think, or one of them anyway, is creating a new routine, but still recognizing that can be a helpful thing. You also mentioned the importance of non-screen time, taking breaks, and really the members of a household interacting in other ways. And that reminded me of some of the other work I'm involved in with Taos Alive. And they call it a protective factor, but basically all of the data, including data from here in Taos County, from the Youth Risk and Resiliency Survey, says that an important factor in how the degree to which a young person avoids being in a situation where they're misusing drugs and such is simply having an adult who cares about them and shows that by asking questions about how they're doing, how school is going. And it's interesting because it really is an additional layer, even beyond the parents now being kind of co-teachers. But to have parents perhaps be in a position to ask even more questions about how is school going, and being open to those conversations and being supportive as everybody struggles to certain degrees through this. And it's a lot for everybody. But
it is. It really is. That reminds me of the first place I read that factoid about the importance of every student having an acknowledgement that somebody cares about them and knows them really well as a person, and that's considered the number one factor for graduating from high school. And feeling like you're ready to embark on life or college or whatever direction you're heading, is that somebody knows you well in your school, someone in your family knows you well, and that you can count on them. And any child who has that already has like just a leg up, so to speak, for success. And it made me think about, because I was talking to one of my young students yesterday and the parent and a couple of the teachers in a meet. And we were looking at that when we feel isolated, which isolation is such a piece of this time, because we're being asked literally to do that for our own self and our own self-health and protection and safety, is to reach out instead of going inside ourselves, and going to that more depressed place when we feel isolated or afraid to try something, or that we don't understand something, that we need that list beside us. If it's children and parents working together to make a list, or a parent or a child reaching out to their teacher and working to build a list of who are my helping hands in my life? Who can I turn to when I don't know what to do, or I don't understand my work, or I don't, feel safe right now. And so kids need that explicit conversation that helps them acknowledge, and then the opportunity to practice at a time when it's not a crisis, or it's not a time they're feeling bad, that that they get to practice reaching out and communicating with others, or having a conversation and knowing their teacher or someone who cares for them.
Yeah. Well, as expected, but even more so, this time completely flew by. And we have about a minute left. But it is a good way to wrap it up, that you as a school administrator and as a message to parents and students, and from my work as well, similarly, I really do encourage, and we encourage students and adults to feel comfortable communicating with each other and with the school. We're all frustrated, and we all understand that we want to be heard. And I think that schools and school staff are even more interested in hearing from parents than parents might think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in this particular time, all the support services and social services that are out there to help families are really taking a very non-punitive approach right now, and that they just really want to be that help. And your school is really one of your first places to go. And your child's teacher is that frontline person when it's not a medical concern. and it's a well-being concern that the teachers are there for the students and they want to help solve those problems and make connections with the children.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michele, for joining us today and sharing all of those great ideas. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate the work you do in the community.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to get to have a conversation with you today, Miles.
Paso a Paso podcast.